These are all new ones.
Maybe we should let Dana present on that bad news. She's just presenting good news.
Okay, we're calling the meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee of November 21st, 2017 to order. Lisa, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Anderson, Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. LaSalle.
Here.
Mr. McEnroth.
Here.
Mr. Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Mahoney.
Here. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of October 17th, 2017. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I had one possible change on page 2, item B, TAC interview discussion. I think we decided to hold the interviews at the December meeting.
Yes, that was decided via email after the TAC meeting. So the minutes reflect what was current at that time. Do you want me to update it to include your email
right.
correspondence? Okay.
Okay, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda analysis, does anybody have anything that they want to add or change to the agenda?
So I do. There may be other changes, but so Dana Webb, who's our senior project engineer and does mostly transportation work, is here tonight. And she's prepared the guidelines for the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit that's included in the Public Works staff report. And since we're going to go through a pretty lengthy presentation on Park Place, I thought if we could move her up so she can present and then escape, that'd be great.
That's fine.
And then in addition to Kelly Reed will not be presenting tonight, John Lewis will be presenting in her place.
Right. Okay, citizen comments. Does anybody have any comments they wish to make for anything that is not on the agenda? Okay. Public Works, Dana Webb, front and center.
Good evening, I'm Dana Webb. I'm here tonight to present to you a draft of a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit policy. So back in 2011, the state authorized local road authorities to lower the statutory speed limit, meeting certain criteria. So in the handout, it kind of pulls that text from the Oregon Revised Statute. So it states that a road authority may establish a designated speed under the posted 25 if it meets the following criteria. So it needs to be located in a residence district. It needs to have less than 2,000 vehicle trips per day. And the 85th percentile speed needs to be less than 30 miles per hour. And in the event those criteria are met and you initiate a lower speed limit, you would need to post appropriate traffic control devices. So taking that state information, I've proposed that we look at allowing 20 mile per hour speed limits on roadways in our transportation system plan that are identified as family-friendly routes. So family-friendly routes are areas that fill gaps between shared use paths, parks and schools, and they offer sort of a network of low-volume streets that are more comfortable for biking and walking. And the concept behind a family-friendly route is to provide those low-speed, low-traffic streets where people are comfortable walking and that discourage cut-through traffic. So page 2 of the document kind of starts to lay out what that might look like in Oregon City. So a roadway would need to be in the residential zoning and shown as a family-friendly route in the transportation system plan. The last page of your attachment has a map that shows both the zoning and the family-friendly routes. They're identified in purple. If a vehicle, if the measured 85th percentile speed is less than 30 miles per hour, as the state lists, and the volume is less than the 2,000. So in the event those guidelines are met, then we would look to implement a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. So we would install new 20-mile-per-hour speed limit signs and remove the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. We would also install some type of traffic control change ahead. So on page 3, these are some examples. So in the city of Portland, this is a screenshot from Portland. So they've initiated the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on their neighborhood greenways, and then the green sign below says neighborhood greenway and looks like this. In our case, we call them family-friendly routes, and we would propose using that text. Additionally, we would post some type of traffic control change ahead or some other type of item to identify the change speed limit and draw attention to it.
Temporarily.
Lisa?
Yes, temporarily.
Help.
And then we would also propose on streets where curbs and sidewalks exist, we would propose a traditional Sharrow street marking, which shows and lets motorists know there's bicycles on the roadway. In those areas where we may not have curbs and sidewalk in a majority of the area, we would propose a street marking that shows both bikes and pedestrians. So we do have some neighborhoods that do not have sidewalks. And this is an example of what that could look like. And in the event we move forward with implementing these, we would refine that symbol and make sure it works out. So that's kind of the concept we're headed towards. We would look to do it not citywide, but at the request of neighborhoods.
Could associations make that request? Neighborhood associations?
Yes.
Sometime back, the subject of recycling signs was brought up. I don't think we ever got really an answer, but this might be a time and place to maybe implement that, since you'd be changing out a lot of 25-mile-per-hour signs to 20-mile-an-hour signs. I don't know how much those cost each, but something to maybe consider.
Sure.
I got a couple of questions just on implementation and long-range memory bank, as it were. Looking at the map and the proposed route that you got through the upper area, there's sort of a jog at Warner Parrott, and it looks like it goes into Chapin Park. Would there be any pressure on the city to do a realignment of that intersection at Warner Parrott so that you didn't have the parallel traffic, foot traffic and bicycle traffic on Warner Parrott for 50 or 60 feet to get across the street? And also, how do you propose to get through the park, if that is in fact Chapin Park that I see there?
Are you talking Woodlawn and where it turns to Boynton? Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
It's the solid line?
down on Central Point Road, the line goes right through into a big white square and continues on through on the other side of it. And
Because Chapin Park's up by the P and Parrott up there. If I could, I'm not sure. We show a line near Chapin Park.
it's approximately in the right spot for the park. I won't say it is.
Well, maybe we can talk about that offline. But
Sounds like a good idea.
What we're trying to get to is not necessarily so much about the mapping of family-friendly routes. That came straight out of the TSP,
Right.
and has been, around for a while. Really, it's more about this idea of pursuing the 20 mile per hour signage, right? We've heard from communities that are interested in seeing slower neighborhood speeds. And so when the state provided this opportunity recently, we, like many communities, hadn't really done anything with it, short of Portland, right? Portland's the one example that has. So we're trying to get there too. And so really Dana kind of took the lead on it and just said, well, we can put together I could put together all the programs and figure out somewhat of a process, or at least criteria. We really haven't established process yet for how we would make requests. I suspect it would be something like our speed hump policy. But the idea is trying to acknowledge, one, we want to look at these 20 mile per hour zones in residential areas that meet this criteria. And then if so, this signage, you know, getting some buy-in or some nod from the TAC about whether or not we're headed in the right direction. I mean, this is really a staff initiative that we brought forward to you. We'd like to move it through the approval process. I'm not sure if we haven't talked really whether we're going to have this adopted by the commission or not. Did we determine whether or not we needed to?
We didn't really talk.
Yeah, so
According to the state statute, you have to adopt an ordinance, so they'd have to go to.
we may need to do that.
That's
So
what this front verbiage was it
Yep.
proposed ordinance?
No, the ordinance would just be that you are,
Well, that's the Oregon revised
yeah.
statute, right?
So the city's ordinance would just be adopted by the city commission. It would be an ordinance stating that you're adopting this 20 mile per hour speed limit based on this set of criteria. And so your city commission would adopt that.
Man, I think that 20 mile an hour thing is a giant step in the right direction. I really do. How long have we been hearing cries from the public to reduce traffic speeds in neighborhoods? And we really didn't have the authority to do it. Now we do.
we would.
We would.
We would.
Well, I think it's.
I mean, again, this is something the commission has to approve, but it sounds like they need to. I was not sure about that, but if we need to get it to the city commission, and getting the Transportation Advisory Committee to support it would be.
But just can't you do it by resolution? Does it have to be an ordinance?
The ordinance acts sort of as your speed order. So instead of ODOT doing the full study, the city does the study based on these set standards that the state has given us. And if it meets it, then we can adopt an ordinance that acts sort of as that speed order.
So we keep it closer to home, the control over this. Yeah, I'm all for that, yeah.
I think it's an excellent thing to do, especially if we can lay out a path ahead of time so we don't end up with 3 blocks and then skip 4 and then add another 3, but can do a continuous route at once.
Okay.
So there is no plan to implement or to put signage up now. It's going to be at request of citizens?
Well, the little bit we've talked about that, we recognize, kind of like what Henry said, is probably take on a section or a neighborhood at a time and do it in a way that makes sense. And so, you know, for us, we could either wait for the neighborhood request, or these are all projects that are identified in our transportation system plan. In fact, we're collecting from new development. We collect revenue from them. Not all the revenue, but we collect some of that revenue. So we may be able to take on more of a 5-year implementation plan or something like that. We haven't discussed it internally as to how we're going to do that. We're more kind of focused on the criteria, whether or not TAC supports the idea, and then if we kind of get that from you, then we'll keep working on it and get it to the city commission in a more informed way about which neighborhoods we would do, and you know, or are we really going to wait for neighborhood requests?
Okay.
Would the city be capable of conducting speed tests, average speed tests, like we usually have the state of Oregon conduct those? But here it says vehicle speeds of less than 30 mile an hour measured at 85th percentile speed. So that sounds like it would require a lot of traffic studies, speed studies.
I think the intent would be to use the speed data that we get every 3 years.
Oh.
So we collect that data citywide. I don't know if we collect it for all these streets, but that was the intent, right? To use that, not necessarily do a speed study like what the state of
okay.
Oregon does, but something.
Yeah, okay.
Well, the residential streets you'd want to include at 20 miles. The collectors are getting up there. And the arterials, they wouldn't qualify because that's at least 35 mile an hour speed limits. You wouldn't want to reduce those to 20. You wouldn't have much justification to do it.
Right. We're talking about these routes that are identified on the map here, these family-friendly routes only.
Our map doesn't have them in the purple color.
I think it only has one.
Well, John, what would be wrong with taking this to the various neighborhood associations and getting their feedback as to how to implement that in their neighborhood, and do it neighborhood by neighborhood, just to spread the workload on the staff, because this looks like it's pretty involved.
Are you talking about implementation now, or
Yeah,
are you talking
yeah.
about getting approval for the criteria and the? Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't spent a lot of time on implementation and even internally and how we're going to do that. I haven't talked to Martin at all about it, and we're just mostly trying to get to the idea and the signage and the criteria.
Would you all like to have a recommendation from us now, or would you like to just?
We'd love to have a buy-in in what we're presenting to you tonight. Yeah, in the form of a motion would be great.
Well, I move that we have the city proceed on this along the avenues discussed and come back to us with a more thorough unit. If I can make that into sense.
I think what you're saying is he recommends that we approve this policy that's been presented. Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, pretty much, but I want to see a little more development. That's all. Like a sample ordinance.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure we're going to need an ordinance to implement it. And I think we need to go forward with it. And it would be nice to be able to see the package and be able to say that the Transportation Advisory Committee stands behind it as written and presented to the commission.
Okay, we can bring you the ordinance.
Well, and that either an ordinance and or a resolution be forwarded to the city commission for full adoption. And you're going to have to research as to whether or not it requires an ordinance, or if a resolution recommending it from this body be sufficient enough. It's just a matter of internal procedure. Legal procedures require a legal document, or will a resolution do? But I second Henry's intent. I think that we ought to endorse it and kick it upstairs and have them bounce it around and find out what it's going to take to implement it.
Okay.
You guys can figure that out.
Yeah, I think we can.
Then could you put that on the January agenda?
We can try.
Okay. If not January, February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question here?
Yes.
We need to vote too.
On the criteria, could you explain the rationale that more than 85% of cars need to be traveling less than 30 miles an hour rather than greater than 30 miles an hour? If they're traveling more than 30 miles an hour, then there'd be a speeding problem.
Yes, so the state requires that, so more than 85% traveling less than 30 miles per hour. So I think I've written it, vehicle speeds of less than 30 miles an hour measured at 85th percentile. So I've kind of reworded the sentence, but essentially that's a state requirement. So when we do our speed counts, the speed counts provide your 85th percentile speeds in there.
So what we're not in essence, if the speeds are greater than 30 miles an hour, it's too big of a change and it's the wrong neighborhood to do it
Yeah.
in.
Or the wrong
Isn't that-
facility. It might be that we need to do some traffic calming in there before we post it as a family-friendly route.
Well, the way I heard the discussion is I don't think we're moving forward with anything with a vote. You just wanted more information before we do that?
Yeah, well, I just put it in a form of a motion, but if in fact it's not necessary, then it's not necessary. We certainly want to have it back to us, and we want to carry it on.
Yeah.
I heard we want to see the ordinance, and we can talk more about implementation.
Yeah,
Okay, so we don't need a vote for that.
no.
Okay.
But I support it.
Well, yeah, I do too, but
I think we
agree
all
with
do.
Henry.
I think John has to hear that.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Dan.
John, would you mind if we move the McLaughlin-Kanema Trail? Well, is there anybody here that wants to speak about the McLaughlin-Kanema Trail follow-up? Okay, John, could we move that then down
Yeah,
behind the Park Place neighborhood?
right.
Okay, good. Don't let me forget to include that, though, after we're all done with it. Okay. The Park Place Neighborhood Association Traffic Concerns presentation. If anybody wants to comment about this subject, please fill out the comment forms that are in the back of the room back there and then pass them on to staff. I don't have too many comments here. Did you want to make a presentation first, John?
I think so,
Yeah,
because
okay.
I don't have a sense for the exact message that the folks that are here to listen to that were hoping for, but I've got about 27 slides here, and the idea was to go over the past, present, and future of the Park Place area, mostly with regard to development and new housing in that neighborhood. I know there's a lot of concern from folks in that neighborhood about growth, and so it's my intent to go over, some of the impacts to the development that's happened in that neighborhood on traffic. So it's pretty squarely focused just on traffic, and that makes sense because we're at the
Pushed it all the way to the
Transportation
left.
Advisory
Right, just
Committee.
leave it
So
there.
I think that's what you asked for, Bob, and so that's
Yes.
kind of what I tried to put together. There's a lot of graphics here. I guess the other thing I'll say is that this information wasn't loaded into the packet, the agenda packet, because I just finished it tonight. So just know that. But Lisa's assured me that when we're done with the meeting, she'll package this along with all the other information for tonight's meeting into one PDF that will be on the web. So really, they would search for what?
You can access it through the public records. It's called Web Drawer. So if you type in the search Web Drawer, you can access the whole packet.
Yeah, because there's so much information here that we're not going to take the time to talk about every piece of information, but a lot of it I presented in list form because sometimes people aren't certain that what we're telling them is really out there in terms of information. So I wanted to show it, even though we're not going to go through it line item by line item.
And I know that John put a lot of work into this presentation and had other people and staff in the city helping him put the information together. So thank you, John, for doing that.
Right. So none of these pictures here are from Oregon City, but it's just occurred to me based on what we're seeing in terms of development applications that Oregon City and in particular Park Place is seeing just a lot of development. And I wanted to really find a quote that would really frame up the conversation. But it turns out that all the really smart people that actually make quotes don't have a lot to say good about population growth, but man, we've got a lot of population growth in Oregon City. Most of it kind of suggests that we should be really focused on population growth, not necessarily in our city, but as an overall society. And so I don't know how to deal with that on a local level. That's well beyond our control as the Transportation Advisory Committee, but I do think that that's a point that's well noted, that we've got a lot of growth, and growth in the region, not just in Oregon City, but growth in the region, growth in the state, growth in the really Pacific Northwest. So I guess a couple things. I pulled from the Transportation System Plan. Oregon City is expected to be home of over 23,000 jobs and almost 21,000 households by 2035, which is a 58% increase and 61% increase from 2010. So the jobs are supposed to increase by 58% and the households are supposed to increase by 61%. I'm not sure if that's really going to happen by 2035, if it's based on this particular year's worth of growth, because we are slammed right now in Oregon City when it comes to development. Maybe it will happen by 2035, but it may slow. And oftentimes that's what happens in regional areas that are like Oregon City that are slated for growth. So this graphic is from our Transportation System Plan. And our Transportation System Plan was adopted in 2013. And I thought this is a good indicator. The dots on the map are each area, there's little zones that are shown in gray on that graphic there. And certain zones have big dots in them, other zones have small dots in them. And the big dots represent, the big red dots represent increases of more than 1,000 homes. And the green big dots represent increases of more than 1,000 jobs. So in the Park Place area, they've got a medium-sized dot, which represents 500 to 1,000 households. And I guess the other big dot that's in or near the Park Place neighborhood is the landfill site down near Home Depot. And obviously that's a regional center and there's lots of potential for jobs and growth. It's the one undeveloped regional center in the entire metro area. So despite the fact, obviously development in that area is challenging because it's on a landfill, right? And we don't have many regional centers that are sitting on top of a landfill. So again, this comes straight out of the Transportation System Plan. It's a good indication. Obviously, there's some neighborhoods that, or some what we're calling zones in this map that have less growth. But the three areas that we call concept areas, South End, Beaver Creek, and Park Place, they all have medium to large size dots. So a fair amount of growth in those areas is planned. This is another map that's got a lot of information on it. We have this map citywide, but I focused it on, or I had our GIS staff focus on presenting this in for just the Park Place neighborhood. And it really tracks development since 1969 through 2016. So the 2017 information is not on here. So a couple developments that we know are under construction don't show up in this map. But really over that time frame, there's 515 new single-family dwelling units over the last 50 years. So I would say growth has been significant in the Park Place neighborhood. And there was definitely certain years, if you look at the table up in the left corner, there's definitely certain time frames when we saw more growth than others. So some years it was pretty much, smaller parcels with four or five lots. But other years, especially as they grouped together, 1996, 97, 98, those were pretty big years for growth in this part of Oregon City. And then it came back in 2003 and then pretty much dropped off 2005. So that information is available for folks if they want to see it. It's also kind of color coded. So again, that's another way to get the date ranges. So the colors really just indicate a range of years as opposed to a specific year that area was developed.
John, quick question.
Yes.
Do those lots, they indicate the creation of lots, either through partition or subdivision, but is there any indication of building permits issued?
Not in this slide, but I do have some building permit information. We discussed the idea of trying to pull building permit information specific to Park Place. It's a little harder, so I've got citywide information on building permits.
So you'd issue a building permit and take how long to build a home? 6, 9 months, a year? And then after that, you'd have to issue an occupancy permit to allow the premises to be occupied, right?
Right.
And once it's occupied, then you've got your increase in population.
Okay, yes.
Okay? In other words, then you've got your traffic because people are using the house. So here you got the creation of the lots. Down the road, you got the issuance of the building permit. Down the road, you got the issuance of an occupancy permit. The family then moves in and all hell breaks loose.
Well, I'm not sure about what all hell breaks loose, but yeah.
Depends on who moves in.
If you're talking, if you're talking about the city's population data,
Yeah.
then yeah, that doesn't happen until after occupancy, and that it even lags after that because I think there's a census process that's involved there. But
So
if you're talking about traffic effects, one could argue that the minute that project moves into a development phase, there's truck traffic and construction traffic before that.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure what point you're wanting to make, but the bottom line is as these move into development, we see a lot more traffic as a result of that. Or I shouldn't say a lot. We see more traffic based on the size of the particular development. This is really difficult to read, so I'm not expecting folks to read this. I have a graphic that goes along with it, but one thing that I wanted to point out to folks, and this is kind of what, Bob, you were asking about with the last topic, which is every 3 years the city collects traffic data in key areas, and we repeat those same locations every year. So I'm showing through 2000, our traffic data from 2004, 8, 11, 14, and 17. And I'm also, so when we collect that data, we collect data both more recently, we didn't used to do it this way, but more recently we collect data in both directions. So that first set of locations is Holcomb Boulevard. It's at Redland Road. It's actually a little bit east of Redland Road. There's eastbound traffic direction and westbound traffic direction. We collect the data in daily trips, right? And then we also collect speeds. So you've probably driven over these black tubes, and there's a traffic counter associated with them. Those black tubes cross the street, and they can count the data, and they can figure out the speed of the vehicle based on those two tubes as your tires drive over them. So they pick up what we call the 85th percentile. So this is the number where 85% of the cars are in that range. So we've tabulated all that for, I don't know, I want to say 8 locations, maybe a little more, 9 locations in the Park Place neighborhood. And that, so that's for all those years. And then the last column I took, and I took the traffic number from 2004 and compared it to the traffic number in 2017. And so that second to the last column shows either an increase or a decrease, depending on whether it's a positive or negative number, in the amount of traffic. So at Holcomb Boulevard, just east of Redland Road, there has been, over that time frame, an 8.2% increase in traffic, okay? And the last column represents the change in miles per hour. So again, I took the 2017 85th percentile speed and compared it to the highest other year, right? So and we had to do that based on the each direction. So for the first line there, in 2017, the 85th percentile speed was 29 miles per hour at that location. And then there's a couple other years where it's 31. So in that direction, that speed decreased by 2 miles per hour, okay, over all those years of data gathering. And so what I'm showing here in tabular form is really what I see is, yes, there's been some locations, mostly along Holcomb Boulevard, where we're seeing increase in traffic. And it looks, I mean, the highest number there is almost 12% from 2004. What is also important for me to share with you, which is that generally speeds are going down. We hear a lot of speeding complaints about the amount of speeds. And I think that's a perception issue more than the reality based on this information. Now, this information, by the way, is based on one time during the 3-year period that we collect that data. It's I think, a good measure. It's accurate. There's a third-party vendor that goes out and collects all that data for us and sends it to us. This information is also available. We've always had it available online. The exception to that is we just got the 2017 data, so I actually asked our technician who's working on this to give me the 2017 data before we've actually published it online, but it's available and will be available for anybody. And this is just in the Park Place area, so we've got data citywide.
John, how do they determine where they locate those rubber tubes to gather that information?
Well, most of it's based on the past, and I don't know how it was originally established, but it's based on, they put it in the same or similar location every year.
That would be critical, especially on Holcomb Boulevard. If it's, they've got that speed warning device down by Steve's Market, which slows speeders down, but if it was ever used as a recording device, it would be very, very inaccurate. Also, if they're coming...
Why would it be inaccurate?
Because it would be recording speeds of people slowing down to go into Steve's Market, or people coming out of Steve's Market, increasing their speed, but not, up to the 40 miles an hour very fast.
Okay.
And then the same thing would be true at the curves up by the school.
So in this case, we've got a map that I'm going to show you next that shows the locations of these, but in this case, there's no indicator to the driver unless he knows that those tube counters are somehow tracking their speed and they feel like a need to slow down. There's no visual indication like there is in the speed sign. So actually, that speed sign data I didn't look at, so I haven't compared that to this information. Okay, so this is all those locations that are in the Park Place neighborhood where they've, spotted those on the plan. And again, the technician didn't know exactly where they were, so if they said east of Redland, for instance, it's not at the intersection. They move it up the road from there, but she just spotted those so that she could share that information with me. But again, we're showing graphically where those are. We've got quite a bit of data on Holcomb. And again, a lot more volume so this is the same results that was shown in those last two columns. It's just shown a little bit more graphically so people could kind of see that as well. So if we start at kind of the east end or the top end of Holcomb, we had a volume that went down for some reason there over that 4-year period, went down 3.31%, but the speed went up. And then we moved down near Swan, volumes went up. That's probably an indication of some of the development that's happening in the area, about 12%, and miles per hour went down. And again, moving on down Holcomb, 8% increase, speeds went up. That's near Steve's Market right there. So I'm not sure if they're speeding up just past the speed sign or what the deal is there, but it looks like there has been a 2 mile per hour change. And then again, down at Holcomb, there's 8.2% increase and about a 2 mile per hour increase. And then we've got information on Forsyth and some of the side streets as well. So just wanted to share that information. Any questions about that? I don't know if you're coming to the same conclusion that I have because I've looked at this data a lot longer, but I guess my sense is there's traffic volume increases and on daily averages. We don't have we do have the peak hour data, which I didn't look at, but in general, it kind of makes sense to me with the trends that are going on with the development out there. You're seeing more trips, and because of that, people are driving slightly slower because there's more traffic on the road. So the other thing is we've had a lot of testimony about Redland Road and Holcomb being problematic for, at times, for commuters getting in and out. And for the most part, coming down Holcomb, turning onto Redland Road and getting out onto 213, right? We've heard several folks come and testify about the problems associated with that. So I'm, again, probably would be nice to have a bigger data set, but I chose to get up early and don't tell anybody, but I took pictures using my cell phone while I was driving. That's probably not legal, but I was just trying to get the data as quickly as I could.
You're the one.
I'm the one.
You're the one.
I'm the one.
I'm going to make a note of that.
Yeah.
Maybe the city should buy a GoPro.
Yeah, probably should. If I'd have had Martin do it, he'd have done it right, but I did it wrong. But it was a quick...
I would have gotten a ticket.
But the idea here is to try and figure out, that was peak hour time. So I was there on the 13th at about 8 o'clock. And these pictures are looking really along the top one. So top and bottom are basically about the same time at 3 different days and 3 different times. So that's looking across from Abernathy, looking up Holcomb, looking across the intersection of Redland Road, and then down below is in the through lane on Redland Road, about to make the left turn onto 213. So and then that was done in the morning at about 8 o'clock. The next one was the next day. Again, looking at Holcomb and Redland intersection on the top, and then down below is just kind of looking at the buildup as you come down Holcomb. And that was about 7. Well, those times are specific to the date stamped on my photos. So, and then same thing on the 16th, only I did it in the evening, about 4:40. And the top picture is coming down Holcomb, just I think I'm close to Steve's Market there. And then the other...
Get to the bottom of the hill in a minute. You're the speeding problem.
Thanks for that, Martin.
You're welcome.
I'm sure there's a 2-minute gap in there almost. But anyway, that's Holcomb and Redland, looking at it from another direction. I guess my point here is that I know, based on the testimony that we've heard from members of the TAC, that there's times when this is much more problematic. When I went looking, I didn't see it. And my sense is that it's got a lot more to do with the problems that are maybe occurring on 205 and 213. But I think the 213 problems are a result of the 205 problems. So I'm not necessarily sure that we have the capacity problem based on the numbers that we're looking at this intersection due to development in Park Place neighborhood. That's kind of my conclusion, based on my limited review. Okay?
We have any findings of the development out in the county, further out, Holcomb Road?
I didn't go there. We've had development out there, but I didn't go.
That's got to contribute, though, to some extent.
Well, except for the one thing, I thought it was interesting that the volume of traffic out there, if you look at the Holcomb Boulevard up on the kind of the top end of Holcomb, near, is that Barlow Drive?
Yeah. Barlow
Jada
Drive.
Way in that area. Those volumes went down. So for what it's worth, it doesn't show it in the data. This is way hard to see, but maybe, Lisa, can you bring up that other map? The other thing that we have is crash data. And I wanted to show that information. So can you zoom in on that to the Park Place area a little bit? So we have this data citywide, and this was collected, I think, for 2014 data. You worked with Chris. Martin and Chris worked on this data, and it's kind of an interesting map. It's probably best for folks to look at this later.
You clicked off of it.
But the data shows the different types of accidents and just the number of accidents for 2014. So
Clicked out of it.
we'll get there. We'll get back there maybe.
We will. Oh, and it opened a screen. Okay. It's you want low resolution or high? She needs to use that.
High is fine.
I can find it. Crash. You want this and this. Oh, well, let me see.
So it's a little hard to tell, but each one of those symbols represents a different kind of accident. So we've shown it based on the types of accidents. And in some of the call-outs where we're at intersections, there have been multiple accidents in that location. So definitely see it at Redland and 213. Not much going on Holcomb. A lot. Those green boxes represent rear-end accidents. I forget what all the symbols represent, but there's a legend in there. Maybe actually go the other way over to the,
I think it's in the bottom left corner.
Do you want to see the legend or you just wanted to see Holcomb?
No.
It's right here.
Yeah, so if you look at this data offline or at another time, you'll see that there's, we track it by pedestrian AM, pedestrian PM, angled accidents on the AM or PM, head on, rear end, side swipe, turning movement. I mean, these are all based on the Oregon State Police Department records, and there's been a lot of effort that we typically don't produce this map. It took a lot of time for Chris to produce this map. He says it's his prettiest map ever, so it's kind of an interesting map. There's a lot of information here, but if we kind of scroll back over, most of it's along 213, and a lot of it's got to do with speed and rear ending along 213. But there is some at Redland and some on Holcomb, but for the most part, I would say that's not, it's hard to downplay accidents, but I just didn't, there was nothing that jumped out at me as something that was overly problematic there. Okay?
Can you tell us what the orange square is?
It's an evening angle collision.
Oh, okay. There's one just down from my house, that's why I asked, and I don't know how somebody could possibly have an accident there.
It was in the afternoon, too.
Okay, so that's about, there's a lot of information there. Again, we're taking a lot of time to get through this, so I better hurry up. Let's move on to the next
Back to
slide.
your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay. So, from current slide, is that what you're looking
Let's
for?
go to the next. Oh, here.
You've got the thing.
So this is on for Laura's benefit. Laura Turway, our community development manager. She's just wanted me to remind folks that, land use, which by the way, engineers don't necessarily dabble in land use very well. I would just say that. It's not been my favorite thing to have to deal with in these development proposals, but it's a lot of those rules are guided through federal, state law. And we kind of dabble in the comprehensive plan, transportation system plans, utility plans, and then when development happens, we're looking at more detail at particular development. So just know there's a lengthy process most of you are pretty familiar with, and beyond that, I wasn't going to say much. I mentioned the concept plans. Park Place is a concept plan area, so it is an area slated for growth, as well as the Beaver Creek Road area and the South End Road area. So again, we anticipate a lot of growth in Oregon City, and it's just kind of how we deal with it and I think for the most part, getting the community to understand that there's going to be growth and there's going to be good associated with that, and a lot of folks would see negative associated with that. But when we do these concept plans, they looked at zoning, they looked at natural features like landslide areas, they looked at school districts, police, fire services, parks, transportation, public utilities. And this is the Park Place concept plan. And I think most of you may have seen this already. I'm trying to remember the year that, I don't know that I noted the year that we adopted this, but
2007. 2007.
2007, 8, yeah, I've got it up there, that's right. So in 2008. So that concept plan looked at most of the area outside of what we know to be kind of the Park Place area. So it's really kind of south, mostly along Redland Road, kind of centered on Redland Road, Holly Lane, and some of the extensions for future growth out there. And again, concept planning, not a lot of detailed planning here. And there was a lot of community meetings that went along with this. But the results of that were 1,459 dwelling units, low residential, there's 163 acres. So all these facts are associated with that concept plan and information that I pulled to provide. There was things like parks and neighborhood community nodes that were mapped. I mean, trying to see this through to fruition is really what the land use process is about. There's a lot of community involvement about that. There's a lot of planning commission and city commission meetings. And usually there's a lot of upset folks when it comes time to approving this kind of development, right? I can't deny it. I've sat through several of those meetings. But it is what it is, and it's, I think it's part of the ongoing process of how we're going to deal with the population growth in the metro region. We are one of many cities that is expected to take on a fair amount of growth.
Well, it's required by Oregon state law that we put these things together, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, we're duty bound to do that.
Right.
And we include the entire community in so doing through the citizen participation exercise.
There's other plans that get a lot of public scrutiny and involvement. At the state level, there's the Oregon Highway Plan. At the regional level, there's a regional transportation plan. This graphic's of kind of the Oregon City area with regard to the 2018 regional transportation plan, which is currently being updated. And this map represents a lot of the key projects in Oregon City that are being discussed at a regional level. And so they get more regional attention. When we start applying for grant funding, they look to these kind of plans for favor. Then the city has the transportation system plan, which I'm going to show you. The county also has a transportation system plan, which I'm not going to go over today. So, transportation project list. There's a lot of interest in the transportation project list. We just got the city commission to update the transportation project list. It's got a lot of aspirational goals in it, and this summarizes that information. So I'm going to show you individual maps for all of these. The driving solutions, the walking solutions, biking, shared use, crossings, family-friendly transit. I've focused, this slide represents what's citywide. So the first column represents the number of projects that are in the transportation system plan. So that first row is citywide projects that are driving solutions and a total estimated cost. That's $243 million. And some of those are SDC eligible, which means new development pays a fair share of those costs. And that number looks like 160 million. So what happens to the difference between those two project lists? There's a gap. So how do we pay for that? We pay for that with gas taxes. Some of it we've leveraged our pavement maintenance utility fees, but there's a gap. There's still a gap of unfunded projects. So we recognize that. There may be grant revenue that helps cover that. Developer funded projects above and beyond what they're paying in fees to build those projects. And then the next column is Park Place projects. So same scenario, but there's only 19 in Park Place. Estimated cost, that's $97 million worth of projects that are planned in the Park Place area, 59 million of which are planned for coverage through system development charges. So a lot of information, lot to go through. I'm going to go through it in detail. So, John, you got a question?
Quick question, looking at the 95 citywide and the 19 projects in Holcomb, what determines the priority of those 95 and those 19?
So in the transportation system, there's a low, medium, and high priority that was included in there. That was kind of a shot at the time in 2013. We've, in this new list, and by the way, there's upcoming in the city commission, there's a couple things that are going on with transportation system plan. We got them to adopt the list in its entirety with new estimated numbers. Next commission meeting is December 6th. We're going to take to them code changes for the several pieces that have mostly to do with reimbursement for project costs that developers incur, or credits that they get for prior development. So there's been some of you have attended our transportation SDC forums or SDC forums. The feedback that we've gotten from there is that one, they think residential development should pay more than what they're paying today in terms of relationship between commercial and residential and non-residential. So the feeling was our SDCs for commercial was too high and residential was too low, so they'd like to see that balance changed a little bit. Then there were some other things about prior development and whether or not development gets credits for that. So more to come. And then last, that letter that you just got handed is a public notice that went out today for transportation SDC methodology and rate changes. And that goes to a public hearing, and so there'll be lots of opportunity to chime in about transportation SDCs. Whether the city commission will decide to fund all of these projects or not, or adopt an SDC that funds all of them, it remains to be seen. So again, lots of information. I just want to show you that in each category, we've got various kinds of projects. So these are the planned street and intersection projects. For the most part, they're showing up along Livesey Road, Redland Road, and 213. And the 213 project, and 213 and Redland Road, I'm going to talk more about that, but that's about a $10 million project. And Redland Road is about a $10 million project. So between those two, there's about $20 million right there. Livesey's also got some improvements.
Excuse me, is that D91 and D79 on the map?
Yes. They're, say that again? Is that what they say?
Well, no, I'm just, the two projects you just mentioned, that's D91 and D79?
That's right. That's right. There's also a D90. So some of these projects that fall off that aren't really in the Park Place neighborhood, that's it's in a different neighborhood, so I didn't focus on that, but it might show up on the map. So in here is not only the graphic representation, but the project list, so you can see those in detail if interested. The total estimated cost is $10 million for that first project is $10,105,000. 81% of that's the non-gross share. So for the most part, we're saying that most of that's existing trips that are generating the need for that project. And we're also saying in that particular case that the city shouldn't be responsible for all of that. The city is responsible for 30%. The problem we have with the state is they're not necessarily seeing that as a priority. So they're not, it's a state facility and it's got city, county, and state traffic on it. But trying to get those other partners to the table to pay for needs in Oregon City limits has been a challenge for us. But, you know, I mean, that's kind of the gap, I guess you will, on some of these projects is how to fund them. And we go through, I mean, again, I think I'm going to take too much time to go through all these, but I wanted you to know that there's planned intersection of street solutions in here. So the roundabout that is called for up at the new intersection with Holly Lane and Holcomb, that's D43. There's some other smaller projects in there too, but that's the big one. Yeah, these are more planned street extensions. So there's a big project, Holly Lane North Extension. So that project that brings you from Holly Lane and Redland Road up to Holcomb Road, that's nearly $20 million project. So,
That D49 Swan Avenue extension, doesn't that go across further north from Livesay Road?
not in this plan. We're not
Oh, wait a
sure.
minute, that's the Park Place
It
concept
goes to
plan.
Livesay.
Yeah.
I don't think it crosses the canyon, Bob.
In the Park Place concept plan, they have it.
Yeah, that's what I was
Not in the
thinking of,
transportation plan.
not the transportation plan.
That's a good catch. Walking, lots of walking solutions. Most of the solutions on Holcomb Boulevard are walking related solutions and then crossing related solutions. So, pedestrian activated signals, sidewalks, sidewalk extensions, street lighting, those kind of things. There's a lot of need along Holcomb for that. And then some of the side streets have those solutions as well. Biking, bike paths. I know it's got some topography in your neighborhood, but the thought is some people will still use bike lanes. And we've got this route, we just talked about family-friendly routes with those 20-mile-per-hour signs. These are family-friendly routes that are suggested in the TSP and some of the costs associated with those. Those could be anything from signage, but more importantly, they're probably going to include things like curb extensions, wider sidewalks, those kind of things. I go backwards. I must have. What did I do here? I think, more crossing solutions. So this is same thing. Again, those are mostly those pedestrian activated crossings that kind of tell people that there's a pedestrian crossing there. Yep. Any questions about the transportation system plan and that project list? I know there's a lot of information there, but the idea for me was to get it in front of you and then have you be able to look at it later. Okay. Then I wanted to jump into the alternate mobility study that's going on for Redland and 213 and Beaver Creek and 213. So I'm almost done. So at one point in time, our transportation system plan called for a grade separated interchange at Beaver Creek and 213. So it was a flyover kind of scenario, no longer in the plan. It was just determined to be too much of a project and in an area that's got too many constraints. So instead, we've got a project now identified in our transportation system plan that we're working through, this alternate mobility study, which is still underway, yet to be adopted, that would include a merge lane for those people that are on Beaver Creek Road, headed towards town from the high school, for instance, and wanting to make a right turn onto 213 and head right north on 213. And so what we're calling for now, as opposed to that, is the only cost-effective solution would be a free right-hand turn lane and about 2,000 feet of merge lane on 213. That's what we think is a solution. There's some other safety issues for bikes and pedestrians, and the plan already called for a signal ahead warning system on 213, so to tell people if there's backed up traffic or something like that. It's about a $3 million project, so that's included in the transportation system plan. And even with that project, we know at full build out there's going to be longer traffic delays than what folks aren't used to in this community. I would say they're probably not anywhere near what they are in other communities for backups, but there are going to be times of the day at that location where you'll have to sit through 2 or 3 signals before you can get through it. So that's kind of the details of that project. This is a graphic which kind of represents that. So this is 213. So Beaver Creek Road is on the left-hand side of the screen. And right now there's a right turn lane there, but it's a yield-controlled right turn lane. So the idea would be that more of a free-flowing. They'd be able to free-flow right out into that acceleration lane and then have plenty of lane to be able to merge safely into the through 213 traffic. And then Redland Road, again, we're trying to figure out how to fund Redland Road. We've talked to ODOT about it, and they're not necessarily offering any solutions there, but we think over time that'll change. We hope it will. We've included some money in our transportation system plan and for SDC collection of some revenues there for money match. But really the recommendation for 213, this is again going to be kind of hard to see, but the bottom line is it adds an additional through lane in each direction. So as you come from 205 and are heading towards Beaver Creek Road, there'll be the existing turn lane would be converted to a through lane, and then they'd add another turn lane there, so where you could turn onto Redland Road. But those through lanes would go past the Holcomb Boulevard Bridge in both directions, and so it would just add that much more capacity at that location. So, again, if the problem that we're seeing is 205 related, we may see a little more capacity on 213, but if it's really just 213 traffic, we're likely to provide a fair amount of capacity there, free-flowing capacity.
Quick question.
Who's going to pay for it? Lots of questions about that.
So one of the things that the state's looking at is the bottleneck in 205 from the river to exit 10 or whatever it is. They only have 2 lanes in each direction. Proposed to make that 3.
Right.
To the extent that, say, you're correct that 205 backup is causing the problem on 213, that may take some of the pressure off of 213 if that gets built and solves part of that problem.
Yeah, because I think they're taking that all the way to the 213. They're going to take it across the bridge, including the 99E interchange. And I think there's some improvements that go at least to the, I guess it would be the south side of the 213 interchange.
Are the lights at Redland and 213, are they timed or are they sensors, traffic sensors?
My recollect is those are on sensors. Do you recall?
Yeah.
We've got loop
sensor
detection.
with a new 2070 controller out there, so it's state-of-the-art for Oregon City.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a state intersection right there. So and they've been pretty responsive. I think there have been some days when it could be that the backup was related to that controller.
Yeah, because there are times, unfortunately, you didn't catch them with your illegal driving and taking pictures. But there are some times that the traffic on Redland will be backed up from 213 all the way back to Holcomb Boulevard and further. So
yeah. I have never experienced that. I drive it legally too, and when I drive it legally, I have not. But I'm not discounting that folks experience problems there, and I think to me it's related to 205 and 213, and it may be related to signal timing at times. So and the key is let us know. Because the state is pretty responsive to Martin's calls in particular. They don't listen to me, but they listen to Martin all the time. And they come out, they're pretty frequent, right? They'll come out and take a look at that.
I have Lisa call them. They're more responsive to Lisa than
is that?
Well, that might be a good thing to know because I've never thought about calling you guys and telling you when it was backed up to Holcomb Boulevard.
Yeah.
And if people in the audience experience that at any time, would they call Public Works or who?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then let's get people out there in TV land also, and these people here to start calling in. Maybe we can get some data that would be very helpful.
Get everybody breaking the law.
Yeah.
Have we, is it, do you think it'd be a good idea to read John his rights?
Well, it is on tape, so.
For what it's worth, there is one thing I've noticed is that 205 is becoming a parking lot westbound from roughly Gladstone across the Abernathy Bridge at around noon and into the early afternoon. And if that correlates with the time that they're seeing Holcomb back up, then is I think that 205 may well be a part of the problem.
Well, it just goes back to that map that you drew, that area wide map that shows Oregon City being a bottleneck.
Yes. It does go back to that, yes.
So that's a good, I mean, there may be questions, but I just wanted to mention in your packet and for those in the audience, right now ODOT is asking for public comment on the I-205 widening and seismic improvement project. So anybody can go to www.i205corridor.org and give them information that you think is important for them to know. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously that's a big topic. The legislature didn't exactly solve that problem, but they are moving forward with design and hoping to bring back to the legislature the reality of what that fix might look like in terms of what it really involves. One of the key things that folks in this room might be interested in is they're proposing to eliminate so on highway, you cross the Oregon City Westland Bridge, you get onto Highway 43. If you're used to getting onto 205 northbound on that on-ramp there, this project is suggesting closing that ramp and creating a different on-ramp scenario that would use that kind of jug handle loop to, so if you're, again, heading northbound on Highway 43, you would make a left onto that jug handle or something. I heard even a roundabout might go in there. I don't know, but I don't think they're that far along with the design, but they are proposing in here to close that ramp, and they're asking for public comment on that. So that's it. That's pretty lengthy, but I didn't know if they were going to be neighbors from the neighborhood that were going to be pitchforks and burned at the stake.
We try to keep under control.
Okay.
Does any other committee members have any questions? Okay, then we'll go on to comments from the citizens. The first card I got was from Linda Van Haverbeek.
Hi, Linda Van Haverbeek, an Oregon City resident and a Park Place resident, and I want to urge you to do as much as you can to list projects and to encourage projects to have a higher priority in Park Place neighborhood to solve problems and fix things. And the reasons that I ask this is John did a great job of putting all the numbers down, but you didn't look at the fact that in Park Place neighborhood, which is an historic neighborhood, part of the Oregon Trail, there's no sidewalk that you can go all the way down to the bottom of Holcomb to get to the top, to the city limits, because it ends at the overpass. There are no signals east of Redland Road. There's no crossings, there's no stop signs. With the increased traffic, yes, they're going slower, but there's more traffic. Do you know all the mailboxes for Holcomb residents are on the south side of the road? All the schools are on the north side of the road. All the commercial is on the north side of the road. All the parks are on the north side of the road. All the churches but one are on the north side of the road. You cannot get across the street as a pedestrian, as a biker at this point. It's very, very dangerous. Even in your car, it's very dangerous. I know that you only have so much money, and probably in the way that you guys measure things by how much traffic, we don't deserve this. We have nothing there. When Lisa comes up, she's going to talk about 20 years ago, or close to 20 years ago, we were looking for sidewalk enhancement plans. Well, it didn't go the way we wanted because of money. And the county was bringing Holcomb Road into the city limits and had to bring some things up to standard. So all the meandering, cute, attractive stuff that was supposed to go on the north side all got to be a sidewalk immediately next to a lane of traffic. There's nothing on the south side except where there's a couple developments. There's swales. My husband and I clean Holcomb Road on the sides of the roads. When we do the curves, one of us has to stand on the one side watching for the traffic on the other side, while one person's, especially on the north side around the bottom curve. It's very dangerous. It may have been considered adequate what was done to fix that side of the road where we had the landslide. I don't think it's at all enough. So I would ask you guys to put as much pressure as you can to get Holcomb Road projects in a higher priority. Thank you.
Mike Mitchell.
Mike Mitchell, I'm an Oregon City resident, but I'll tell you that I'm not a Park Place resident. And I apologize if you've heard this before, and I apologize that it's probably way premature, but I think it was too good of an idea to not get on the record somewhere. I was on the advisory group on the alternative mobility standards, and I want to give credit to the right person, and don't hold it against the gentleman that he happens to be an ex-mayor, but Dan Fowler made what I thought was a terrific suggestion, and I don't know that it really got documented in that group's work, and I think this group needs to hear it. What he suggested, if you imagine going westbound on Holcomb, just before the bridge over 213, a right turn on-ramp directly onto 213 northbound. So you're taking all of that morning commute traffic, you're taking them out of the intersection at 213, or excuse me, at Redland and Holcomb, and you're taking them out of that left turn at 213 and Redland. I thought it was a great idea. John showed the map a couple of slides ago about a recommendation to widen there. But I just want to make sure that it's on the record to consider that on-ramp idea of Dan Fowler's, because I think it's a terrific solution. The only other thing I would say, when I was looking at the chart of the projects, and I was a little surprised given the Park Place concept plan that only 15% of the total plans seem to be in the Park Place area, but I looked a little further and it's about a third of the dollars. So there is, it looks like there's a lot of bigger projects maybe planned for Park Place. Whether it's enough, you know, who knows? We'd all like to have more, but it isn't the 15% that it looked like at first. It's a third of the money. So thank you.
I guess one thing I'll comment on the the concept plan projects. A lot of those fell off the map. So anything on the other side of Redland Road weren't included there. Just so you know that. So all that Holly Lane area, that I didn't include those in this presentation.
And I think I heard something about that on-ramp that you were talking about, that there wasn't enough merge distance there. But I would think that consideration of the amount of traffic that it would relieve, like you mentioned, at the Holcomb and Redland, it would deserve some further consideration. That's my personal opinion. Okay. Lisa Novak.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lisa Novak. I'm a resident of Park Place. I live on Holcomb Boulevard on the south side of Holcomb. The configuration of Holcomb Boulevard is such that speeding is passively encouraged. Vehicles are roaring down the hill from the direction of Bradley Road, and posted speed limits are not followed. From the opposite direction, vehicles coming up the hill from the west, from the direction of 213, speed up in the vicinity of Hunter and Holcomb. That's where I live. I hear it happen. The vehicles accelerate for some reason unknown to me coming up the hill. I've also witnessed distracted driving and a fair amount of illegal maneuvers along the boulevard. Help me understand why it is acceptable for children to walk across Holcomb with no safety measures in place. These children are waiting for school buses on the north side of Holcomb in a most dangerous situation, as the sidewalks on this side are very close to the boulevard. Anything could happen. As I mentioned, I've witnessed distracted driving and occasional illegal maneuvers. Help me understand why drivers do not stop for people attempting to cross the boulevard. People have the right of way, and by law, drivers are expected to yield, stop for those attempting to cross a road. This does not happen. I witness this every single morning. By the way, my daily walks are restricted to early mornings. During evening rush hour, I would be taking my life in my hands if I attempted to cross Holcomb in an effort to reach a sidewalk. I've tried it. Lately, I've been taking my life in my hands even at 6 a.m. A driver can't not see me. I wear safety colors, I wave my arms, and I'm obviously attempting to cross the road. No one stops. Is our aim to be a city of car-centric residential developments where people are trapped in their neighborhoods, discouraging community and walkability? I'm beginning to think this is the case. The night of October 16th, my husband and I were returning home from a meeting. As we neared our home, we noticed a body laying on Holcomb Boulevard. We quickly pulled over and recognized the person as an elderly neighbor. He had apparently fallen or fainted while taking his trash to the curb. We called 911 and an ambulance arrived. He is okay now, but I shudder to think what might have happened if we hadn't seen him. Help me understand why the Holcomb Pedestrian Concept Plan of 2004 wasn't implemented. It's on the city's website. I can appreciate budget constraints, but Holcomb Boulevard was recognized in 2004 as a minor arterial that required traffic calming measures. In the past 13 years, the neighborhood has grown even more and more developments are in the works, and we still have no traffic calming measures. Help me understand why safety measures such as crosswalks, stop signs, or other traffic calming measures are not being implemented or even being tested. I believe we can do better. I respectfully ask the city to make this a priority. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on this matter? Well, I'll put my 2 cents worth in. I passed around a map, which I think many of you have already seen, to the members here. It shows all the areas that have been recently developed or in the process of being developed or are in the near future probably going to be developed, along with the number of houses associated with each section that is crosshatched in red. And I think that most or a lot of the concerns of the Park Place neighbors is the cumulative effect of all these new developments. The Planning Commission and the City Commission will approve these developments one by one. But, you know, add a dozen here, 27 there, 15 here, and they're all going to Holcomb Boulevard. That's where the traffic starts getting more than what the traffic situation, or more than the roads can handle. John, let me ask you this. Is there any way that we can pursue that possible on-ramp from Holcomb Boulevard to 213?
Pursue it. What do you mean by pursue it? I mean, the problem we're having with the existing project, which is much kind of less intrusive, is we have made very little headway with finding a real way to fund that. So adding an on-ramp or basically kind of a partial interchange would be, I mean, we can share the idea with ODOT.
Yeah, because my thought is that if that on-ramp was added there, it might relieve some of the pressure at Holcomb and Redland and 213. If that makes any sense. I mean, we've taken a lot of traffic off of those intersections.
As a additional thought, if you were to tell ODOT that ramp that we're talking about could bypass the Redwood Road signal and merge with 213 on the north side of that signal, that would then become the same lane that we're using to get onto the Clackamas River Drive now.
That third lane.
That third lane. But it would, in order to make it work, it has to bypass that signal at Redmond Road. Because if you drop it down onto 213 south of that signal, you don't have enough room.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd have to miss Redland. I don't have a good answer, but we'll ponder that a little bit and figure out if there is a, it's not in a regional plan right now. It would have to get in the regional plan. All the work associated with estimating and figuring that out. Yeah.
Not to mention
It's kind of
right-of-way
a new-
acquisition.
A new idea. So I don't know. Let me look into that.
Okay, well, we've had an opportunity of the people of Park Place to express their concerns and the whys and wherefores of that, so thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to recognize Martin Montalvo for his active duty for 60 days with the Coast Guard Reserve. He was called to duty to go down to Texas to help with the storms down there, and then he was moved from there to Florida, which is where he came from.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Martin. We appreciate your service.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Glad to be home.
Also, I noticed in the city newsletter that John has a distinguished person on this, and Martin have the same distinguished person on their staff that got a regional award.
That's on tonight's.
Yeah, we'll go on to that
It's
in the
on
public
tonight's
works report
agenda.
for you.
Oh, it is.
Okay, the next item will be,
We want to do that McLaughlin Trail real quick because I'm gonna-
yes, 5A McLaughlin's Kenema Trail follow-up. They don't love us anymore.
Some do.
just wanted you guys to know that my mom and dad showed up tonight just to support me in case that you guys all came from work.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It wasn't necessary, thank goodness.
Stick my mom on you guys. And you
No, don't do that.
They're in town from Medford. Okay, so this McLaughlin Kenema Trail, Kelly was scheduled to come tonight. I think that went before the Planning Commission last week, and some of the feedback was we want you to take a look at a couple other items, get an actual motion or buy-in from the Transportation Advisory Committee. And so Kelly put it on the agenda and then decided they want to have, they've got a committee that, specifically looking at this. So they expect a couple more changes out of that. So she's put together a schedule. Can you go to the next, or I guess I can go to the next slide. And I just told her, well, no need to show up tonight. We'll just cover it for you. But so they're going to do a community advisory group meeting number 4 to finish that final plan review and make some additional recommendations. They expect it to be updated in January. So they'd like to come to our January Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. And I said that could be, that would be fine. I think the same for the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. They want to get, Planning Commission asked for specific approval from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee too. And then it'll go on to Planning and City Commission after that. So look for that in January, okay?
Bob, I've got a comment, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
John, on these trail issues, I'm all for walking and pedestrian right-of-way and things like that, and trails. But one of the fundamental problems I see, it's a practical problem. And we had it when we looked at the hotel down there on Washington. There was a question brought up about a walking trail behind the hotel, which joined in with some of the other proposed right-of-ways. And there was no indication that the property owner had given an easement or right-of-way on this proposed trail. And I wondered, where in the heck did property rights come into this thing for a landowner to express his cooperation or, you know, his concern about taking property from him on a proposed trailway without being consulted, just being included into the plan. And this is where I see the practical problem raising its head. The property owner's got to have some rights to say, wait a minute here, folks. You know, I plan to develop this piece of property, and your trail is not included in this development. So let's sit down and talk. Are you going to give me money for this? You're going to buy it from me? You want me to give you an easement for it? Boy, I tell you, if I was a property owner, I would say, whatever happened to property rights here? I mean, the cities in the metropolitan or a metro is doing a lot of these fancy plans and things, but where's the money to implement this? You know, we implement highways and things of that nature and go out and buy right-of-ways, but what about these trails? And I'm kind of concerned because I think down the road, when you go to implement these things, you're going to run into some very practical administrative problems, and it's going to cause concern throughout the community. That's what I got to say.
As a member of that trail advisory group, the private property concerns are on Tumwater, okay? Mm-hmm. That back side of those properties there, and of them, and that would be with the permanent trail. The temporary trail doesn't go there, and so there's not. That's I think the biggest area where there's property concerns.
So I guess the quick answer is, yeah, I think you're right. The devil's in the details. So we go through lots of public process to get plans approved. Most notable, the transportation advisory, or the transportation system plan, and then Parks has a pathway plan. So that's kind of that first level. Actually, if it gets on the regional list, it's even better, right? But usually those are like that map that we showed where Henry was trying to point out, I don't know exactly where you were talking, but you know, maybe an alignment problem or something like that. They're pretty high level, right? So that's why this Kenema one is kind of interesting, because they put a lot more energy into figuring out exactly where that trail would go. And so the idea is to come up with estimates for that, and sometimes that includes property acquisition and get it in the transportation system plan and get it adopted that way, so at least we're collecting some revenue to reimburse that property owner. So when they come in, they can either agree to let us do it in a project that we develop, right, and we pay for, and maybe pay them for that right away, or if they come in through the land use process, we got a few more tools to be able to force that development to go forward. But if it's no different than most development has to put in a local street, but if we want an arterial right next to them, then the transportation system funding, they can apply for reimbursement through that fund. And that would be true for a pathway as well.
Well, I don't want to make a big issue out of it, but it almost came to the point where a vote could have been taken to deny that hotel, a $10 million project, just on the basis of a detail. And I don't want to talk out of school, but the United States Supreme Court says you can't do that. You can't force somebody to give you property unless it's a taking issue. So you got to acquire it as a right-of-way. And I want to see it incorporated into the plan, at least a paragraph saying that this is how we're going to implement it, so that it's on record and the public knows, if it's a general line somewhere, and in the details it lands on your property, that you can negotiate with the public sector. You're not going to have property condemned or what have you, that kind of stuff. And that's where I think that these people here were talking about the implementation of the concept plan for Holcomb Boulevard, was it? Or pedestrian right-of-way?
Oh, right.
You got to have some notice given to the public as this is how we're going to do it. And then you include that in your budget, or you include it in some sort of policy to generate those funds. Because if you don't, you're looking for trouble down the road. And we found it in that hotel because it was discussed ad nauseum. And it got to the point where it was going to tip one way or another. And finally, we voted in favor of the hotel. And it was a little unnerving, to say the least,
So in our TSP, we don't have a trail plan showed where that on that hotel site, nor do we have it in.
I can't hear you.
For the hotel site, I don't think we have a trail plan for that area.
Well,
not in the TSP anyway.
Well,
there may be
sure
some
discussed
other
as if it
trail
was.
plan. There may be another trail plan. It's kind of like the Holcomb plan. Sometimes those get brought forward in the TSP, sometimes they don't. So there may be some old plan out there that shows a trail, but we didn't have in our transportation system plan. But yeah, I hear you, Bob. It's trying to get these high-level plans implemented is a challenge. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes they're aspirational and we just can't.
As an administrator, it'd drive me nuts to try to put that nuts and bolts together if I didn't have some sort of guidelines, Well,
that's why I think those, like the Kenema Trail, that's a good effort. If we can put that level of detail, the Holcomb Trail plan, if we can put those, take that 3,000-foot level plan and put, some community involvement, they did lots of things.
There's a budget. They have a estimated budget to put that in place, all the different parts of that Kenema Trail.
Yeah. So, but not every trail gets that level of detail. I mean, because it takes a lot of staff time to do this. But, okay, so what are we moving on to?
The next item is the neighborhood traffic fact sheet follow-up. I got a chance to read through it, and I'm pretty darn impressed. I looked through it in detail twice, and I really couldn't find anything in it that I would want to change or add. I think the people that put this together did a yeoman's job.
Actually, Lisa did most of the real work.
I kind of thought that.
And she did it so very well.
And I did want to follow up and tell you I did contact the police department and Chris Wadsworth to see if they had anything to add, and they did not.
Okay.
So this is pretty much the coming to the final draft here. So I was hoping if you had any last revisions that we could give you a week and you could email them to me, and then we can finalize this and have our...
Well, I'd like to hear a motion to approve this neighborhood traffic fact sheet to be passed on to the city commission for their examination and approval.
Could I have a couple comments and
Yes.
bring questions first?
Sure.
Okay, as far as the police department, we're reference to enforcement being tried. I saw a paragraph in here that said to the effect that traffic calming measures could be implemented if some other method of solving the problem doesn't work. So I looked at that and I said, well, that could include enforcement. Mm-hmm. So my previous concerns about that. I don't have those concerns anymore. Another question I had, I think this is a new paragraph, it's just a question, but it's the last paragraph in the main body about local improvement districts. And it says this type of special improvement district requires a petition to the city for desired improvements. So my question is, do local improvements have to be initiated by the property owners, or can the city initiate a local improvement district and ask the people to approve it?
Well, the city can initiate that. It's a lot better if we're collaborating with the neighborhood on it, but it takes 51% of the abutting or affected neighborhoods to approve it. And so if we don't get that, then we can't move forward with the local improvement district. So it's always better to have some buy-in from the neighborhood.
It's almost impossible to do an LID if the neighborhood doesn't approve.
And I worded it that way because that's what came off of the policy that we have on our website, which I believe I hyperlinked to that policy as well. So I just wanted to keep it consistent.
Is there 51%, is that for like feet of frontage on the street, or is that just a property owner with 25 feet of frontage have the same power as a property owner with 200 feet of frontage?
It's been a while since I looked at that, but my recollect is it's based on area. If they're fronting if they're considered in the district and benefiting from the project, then I think it's based on area, not frontage necessarily. So it could be a flag lot compared to somebody that's got their full frontage. If that flag lot opens up into the same size parcel, they'd have an equal.
It seems like I saw something somewhere about they would have one vote per household. Does that strike
I guess my answer is from recollect. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, that's me too, but
The ones I worked on have been sort of a combination of frontages and ownership.
Yeah.
But then they're mostly for streets and linear projects.
Well, there's two things. There's one that's got to do with, kind of that, what's constitute 51%. Then there's the way the engineering study assesses the cost of the project. And that may be frontage based. That if it's a sewer line, for instance, it's running down, or a sidewalk, then that may be more the engineering study that's required of that provision of the code would have to determine what the right allocation methodology would be.
Quick question about the same page. The first paragraph references the speed radar and the speed humps probably would need to be paid for by residents. I'm thinking that residents might not read that, and if you put that same sentence on each of those two where they're actually talked about, then they wouldn't miss it and get surprised.
anybody else have any?
I still have another comment.
Sure.
There are a couple on Appendix B, the speed humps. Well, the first one is a speed hump eligibility checklist on page 14. The second question is, the street does not provide a transportation service to the community beyond that of simply providing access to the immediate abutting residences. To me, the way that sounds to me is the only streets that would qualify are access roads to a flag lot or a cul-de-sac. It seems a little severe. The other one is, the other comment is on the criteria. And this is similar to the question I brought up on the reduction of, or the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit about speed humps will not be installed on any street where 85th percentile speeds are greater than 30 miles an hour. I still say that should be less than 30 miles an hour. if you go back on the checklist, about 2/3 of the way down, are 85th percentile speeds greater than 30 miles an hour. The desired answer for somebody wanting speed humps is yes, which is positive if you want a speed hump. But that seems to be contradictory to the statement that speed humps won't be installed on streets where the 85th percentile is greater than 30 miles an hour. And the other point I have to support changing that is that the same criteria on Public Works website says that speed humps shall not be installed on any street where the 85th percentile speeds are less than 30 miles an hour. So you have a conflict between what's here and what's on your website.
So it sounds like we should probably look at the speed hump policy, because this policy has been established for a while. It hasn't been looked at closely in a few years. So I just attached this document. This wasn't created by me for the neighborhood traffic fact sheet. So it's an existing policy that we've had, so we probably should take a look at it again.
Yeah, the intent is that if your 85th percentile speeds are greater than 30 miles an hour, you cannot install speed humps. What you're going to do is rip off the undercarriage of the cars going through there. So we're using that as a tool to say, essentially, you can't use this on collectors, you can't use this on arterials. It's supposed to be 85th percentile is 30 miles an hour or less. There may be some disconnection as to what's in the policy and what's on the website. So we'll look into that and make sure that they're all consistent. But the message is supposed to be that if you are 85th percentile, 30 or greater, you're ineligible for speed humps as a traffic calming measure.
And I agree, the checklist, though, the yes/no checklist, it does look contradictory, as you said, because you want as many yes check marks as possible, so we should probably adjust that language as well. So, yeah. So
Is that speed hump information, is that a code, or is that just a direct?
It's an engineering recommendation. It's an engineering recommendation associated within several transportation
And it wouldn't have to go
manuals.
before any board or anything?
No.
Okay.
So after addressing that, I'm fine with approving the.
Nobody's hurting
So I'd make a motion, we approve the draft with the recommended changes discussed here this evening.
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have just initiated the process to go forward to the city commission. That's great. I'm glad we got this together. Now we need to make a change to our bylaws objectives. Now, get rid of that wording about the neighborhood advisory, traffic advisory information, change it to this.
Yes.
But I think that's just we don't need to pass any.
No, that's just a housekeeping.
Yeah, I think that's just a housekeeping, and Lisa is a great housekeeper, so. Leave it there. John, did you have any more information from your department?
Yeah, Martin's going to carry out the lion's share of what's left here, I think.
Let me get to the right page here. Yeah, so Dana's already. I'm gonna hold that up for us, Dana. So Dana's already provided you an update on the 20 mile an hour speed zone, and recently John had submitted an application for one of our staff members, Matt Paulson, who's a member of the Oregon Pavement Management Association. And Matt has really taken the reins in the 5 years that I've been here, and even prior to that, with not only being the street supervisor, but serving as the city's unofficial, but almost official now, pavement manager. So he's taken that program leaps and bounds beyond what it started at several years ago. He's an incredible leader for his division, and he's also an incredible pavement manager. He really is passionate about this job. So we put together a list of accomplishments that he's been able to put together. using our pavement maintenance fee and submitted it to the Pavement Management Association. And Matt was selected as the Pavement Manager of the Year for 2017. And this is, I believe, for the entire state of Oregon, correct? Yeah.
So 3 states.
3 states, the Northwest.
Northwest.
Yeah, I wasn't aware it was that wide.
Great.
But yeah, I can tell you from talking to other municipalities and other counterparts, our pavement program is the envy of a lot of our sister communities. We've been able to do a lot leveraging our fleet funds and our pavement management funds, getting the guys appropriate equipment, but more importantly, being able to put that equipment to good use.
So can we send him an attaboy?
Sure, I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Way to go.
I guess the other thing I would say is in kind of putting the application together, definitely a group effort. Matt's leading the charge, but Martin's taken that program to higher levels. The crew's taken that to higher levels. Lisa deals with all the mailers and the complaints and all those things. It's definitely a team effort. And when Matt got the award, we wanted to make sure he felt good about it. It is his award. But he couldn't do it by himself, that's for sure. So
He looks pretty happy there.
He does look pretty happy there, doesn't he?
What about something a little atypical, and that's either us meeting at the time where that whole crew could be recognized and thanked, because they're one of the big solutions to the things that we recommend. Yeah. And so they could have the crew and Martin and Matt, so bring them all in. It can be the first 5 minutes in a regular meeting or whatever. I don't know.
We can ask Matt to attend. The crew might be a little bit harder. I can tell you most of them will politely decline.
Matt and Jason.
Well,
Matt and Jason would come, and Wes and a few others.
Yeah.
But I'll propose it before them and let them decide as to who'd like to attend. And then what we're going to do is a formal recognition from TAC for Matt and his crew in terms of what they do for maintaining the transportation system.
Yeah,
and if you can put that together, try to get the city photographer involved.
That's any one of us with a phone now.
Bob is a pretty good photographer.
We can work something out. We'll try and get it onto. I'll take a look at next month's agenda. We're getting into the holidays, so our staffing levels kind of plummet. But we'll see what we can try and put together for next month.
If we could get a car in here, John could take the pictures.
We'll pull the milling machine around, and you can all take a ride on it as it goes 3 miles an hour.
Who's the happy guy on the left as you look at it?
That's the director, I believe, of the Northwest Pavement Management Association.
We have a picture of the crew.
Oh, do we?
Well,
the
everything
Avengers
falls apart.
Do you want to share that with them?
If I can find it, I'll look.
By the way, I'd like to say that the installation of down there by the coffee shop, Dutch Brothers Coffee Shop, looks pretty good. They must have risked their life and limb putting it in, though.
John,
Just a
you
lane
got to
shift. It
tell them
wasn't
about
bad.
the tickets.
Yeah.
No, again, Matt's crew did that, and I thought they did a fabulous job. They got it done in pretty quick, and
4 hours total.
it's been successful. I haven't got a recent update, but within 12 hours of installation, I heard from the police department that 5 tickets have been given for people doing U-turns across the railroad tracks up there. So
It is marked as an illegal U-turn.
Yeah.
So the ticket is $80 for illegal U-turn, but more importantly, $260 for disobeying a traffic device, because there's a sign advising you no U-turn. And I will tell you, the skid marks show us that someone has decided to just jump the curb. And I think we've got one of the delineators that we've had to replace now.
No kidding.
No?
Boy, they must make a heck of a cup of coffee.
They're putting something in that coffee.
Yeah, I guess so.
Beyond just caffeine addiction. It's something strong.
He's probably taking a picture.
Dutch Brothers, they could make that queue much longer on their own property. They need to come from Main Street and go all the way around, but that's out of our control.
Yeah.
They take orders there at the curb, why just don't, like he said, get into the property and take orders, make that queue longer. Goodness gracious.
Like they do up on Malawa.
Yeah.
So the other thing we wanted to update you guys on, last month, I wasn't here, but we were able to review the videotape. There had been some requests from the residents along Myers Road out by High School Lane and Beaver Creek. And are you trying to find
I'm trying to, yeah, I will.
the Avengers photo?
Yeah, the photo.
There you go.
This is the crew. Yes.
So one of the guys, their
that the city
spouse
staff?
put that together.
Yeah. Oh, that's really like it. That's pretty funny. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
In last month, there was a request for making some improvements, predominantly for the pedestrian corridor between High School Lane and Myers. So Matt and I went out there and took a look and made a couple assessments of what we could do. One of the things that the individuals was asking for, could you go to the next one?
Yeah.
Was specifically the center median sign that you see there, saying, well, the city had used those in a couple locations and they thought they were very effective. So I'll be the first to admit, we put those out there, out along Mount Pleasant Elementary. They're on the exterior sides of the lanes, and it's an improper use where we did it. The MUTCD states are really only supposed to use this where there is a median or a safe harborage, where the pedestrian stop to get from one side, get about halfway through, stop, wait, and then be able to get over to the other side. So when we did this pedestrian analysis, we want to make sure we were still complying with the MUTCD.
You got any more?
So there are 5 crosswalks in that corridor. 2 of them have these planted mediums, and we installed the state law stop for pedestrians within the crosswalk at those 2 locations because they are appropriate and they meet the MUTCD. Vegetation-wise, just so you're all clear, the guys are going to go back in a few weeks and we're going to take out some of that vegetation and replant it with something that's not going to grow up and start covering those crosswalks. The other thing that we did was the request was to put pedestrian head signs with 5 crosswalks all within that quarter-of-a mile distance. We start getting concerned with visual clutter and kind of desensitizing people to putting in too many crosswalk ahead signs. So you'd be looking at a total of 10 crosswalk ahead signs within that quarter-mile stretch. So what we decided to do was within the terminus coming in and out of that corridor, we put crosswalk ahead signs to make sure that people are being aware you're coming into a high congestion area with pedestrians. Yeah.
Looking at the sign, looking at pictures of that sign, would it be possible to put a square 5 between the regular sign and the ahead to sort of indicate that there's more than one?
I get concerned with that because then somebody could think it's like speed limit or something. Because remember, advisory speeds, like when you're coming into a curb, they're not that yellow, but they're that yellow orange.
Yeah.
So then it gets a little confusing.
Those things really help me.
Yeah.
They really do.
What we could do is, if this isn't sufficient, we can look at putting those orange
Flags?
squares, diamonds, see if that might help. But right now, I think we've done what we can. All the crosswalks, the thermoplastic's in good shape. There aren't any other issues there. The other thing we did want to have is a conversation with the high school, see what we can do there in terms of some enforcement.
Maybe you mentioned this and I forgot, but they also wanted to make you aware that state law says that those signs right there can't be higher than 4 feet. So that's why they're so low to the ground, a maximum of 4 feet tall.
Yep. Okay. So
that's-
any questions?
So the neighborhood's seen quite a bit of improvement in the signage, which is what they were looking for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing we're looking at is meeting with the high school and talking to them in terms of improvements for the overall school zone signalization and signing. It's not as simple as putting in some additional signage. There's some engineering work and some cost that goes into that, but we're going to bridge that or start that communication
I
with
think
them.
there was also intent to inform students of what the actual laws are that relate to these signs, so
Yeah.
they don't go streaming across in the middle of the block. And so that, when you talk to the school, you should make sure that they do that with new orientation each year or something like that. It could be a handout or whatever.
Do we have any feedback that these crosswalk signs have made any difference yet?
So there's been no monitoring. So
Any anecdotal?
we've not heard anything that I've been advised of. Lisa, have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything.
This may be a case of no news is good news.
Yeah. So once
They're
we
definitely, I mean, to a driver, they're obvious. It's kind of like those, speed limit signs that tell you something. There is some benefit to those.
Yeah.
So,
But every one of the intersections or crosswalks is properly signed and trying to meet the MUTCD to the best that we can. That's all I have for the public works report.
Okay, and then your packet, the communications, the ODOT I-205 widening and seismic improvement announcement is very encouraging. How long it will take to get there, I don't know, but it's encouraging. Does anybody have any future agenda items they'd like to be considered?
I had some requests or comments at the last South End Neighborhood Association meeting, which probably don't amount to a future agenda item, but this is, well, bring it up anyway, is they had 3 comments. One was on Central Point, they're speeding again, but luckily Lisa had emailed me just a couple days before that John had asked the state to look at Central Point. So they were pleased with that. The other is on Partlow Road, the same crosswalk at South End. Martin had put up some previous signs on that to call further attention to stop it for pedestrians at crosswalks. They still bring that up. I don't see any improvements that should be made, but it's up to you.
Didn't we increase signage at that location?
Pardon me?
At Partlow, didn't we install signage at that location?
Yeah, you put in those signs that state law requires you to stop for pedestrians.
Okay.
So when I drove through there, it looked fine to me. But.
Okay.
And the other thing was where Partlow has an S curve right to the east of South End.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody noticed that there were turn signs or chevrons pointing to the right for cars traveling westbound on Partlow, but there were no similar signs for cars just coming off South End and entering that. But so I don't know if that is
Coming
clear.
off South End, turning into that?
Might that be because of their speed? They're on Partlow, they were going 25 miles an hour. That's the speed there, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, coming to the curve, well, then they see the curve, but when they're coming off of South End, approaching that curve just a short distance, so they already achieved 25 miles an hour already. Might not be needed.
I think that's probably a good, the other piece is trying to get those chevrons into those new homes. So they'd have to be on that existing bulb out, right? There's that bulb out there. So trying to get chevrons placed, it'd be in somebody's front yard, basically. And I think the other thing is that it's delineated a little better with curb and sidewalk through there, as opposed to coming the other way. There's, on one side at least, there's shoulder. I think there's a piece, it's narrower. I don't know. I don't know the reason necessarily, but seems like it's pretty obvious to the driver going the other, a lot more obvious than the other way, right? Where you've got a long straight stretch and all of a sudden a curve and maybe not well lit.
Yeah, I would say as you're coming on Partlow headed northwest, the chevrons, you've got a long straight run coming right up just before those chevrons, and then the road starts to take that S turn. And we're trying to advise the driver coming in there, you've got to change the pattern that, because it's a relatively flat grade, you may not be able to observe it. Whereas somebody coming off of South End, you don't have a quarter mile and you've been coming up to speed coming into that. You basically just came off South End and you're going straight into those S turns. So it may not be needed, but definitely coming from Partlow on that straight run as you come towards the S-turn, you know, just looking at here on Google Earth, you've got pretty good flat grade that you can't tell where the road is going.
Well, you may see the driveway beyond and okay, so.
Yeah, the old road used to, I don't know if you were there, Gary, but the old Partlow used to go straight through there until they realigned that intersection, so that may have been part of it.
Yeah, right through that house.
And Gary, can I go back to the Central Point thing? So Dana has also been looking at the Central Point thing, and what we're noticing is that, so coming into the city limits, it's posted at 45. Then at Partlow, it changes to 35. It stays 35 from there on. Interesting thing with some of the traffic data, speed data that we showed tonight for the Park Place presentation, we looked at that same speed data. And the 85th percentile speeds in the 45 mile an hour section are less than 45 miles an hour, so they're more like 38 miles an hour. But in the 35 mile an hour section, we're seeing speeds in the 85 percentile in that 44, 43, 45 miles per hour. And so I guess, you know, what we talked about was in the speed study request form, there's, you know, there's what the agency wants, what police thinks, and what a neighbor, you know, whether there's been any neighborhood comment on that. So we're probably going to float that idea out to the neighborhood in a online kind of survey. And I think the concern is that if they check the 85th percentile speeds, it may go up to, they may make the decision that it should be 40 miles an hour all the way along that road section, which isn't the objective of most out there. So I don't think the neighborhood is necessarily, there might be some in the neighborhood interested in that kind of a change, but it never seems to come to us for increased speeds. It's always about decreasing speeds, right? So
it might backfire on them.
It could backfire, and I just felt like I was supposed to mention that to you guys tonight, and so I have. And a couple other things. Are you done, Gary?
I'm done. I agree with Martin's analysis of those turn signs.
Okay. So December, we have a meeting to talk about interviews, right?
No, December, we're holding the interviews.
We're holding the interviews.
At the December meeting.
So something's come up with the schedule of the alternate mobility study that we're feeling like, well, this mostly came about because of the Kenema trail plan and the fact that the Planning Commission wanted to make sure that we got buy-in from TAC and from PRAC. And so in thinking that through for the next plan that's going to come before the Planning Commission, we thought we should bring the alternate mobility study to the, not the PRAC, but the TAC. So just given our schedule and the fact that we'd really kind of like to move that plan forward on the schedule that we'd planned on, we'd like to be able to bring in, I don't know if we're going to bring in Kelson or if I'm going to do it, but somehow we want to get that in front of you, and we're thinking December's the time frame. So I don't know how much time we need for that interview process.
Well, you could send out for us to review beforehand.
We can do that as well. It'll be in a draft form, but yeah, that's something we would do.
It seems like, as my memory on those interviews, is it takes about an hour and a half to go through the crew. Now, you've got a change in the process that we're supposed to follow this time?
Yes, so it takes about 15 minutes per interview. We have 3, although we may have 4 when the chamber recommends an individual, which they have not yet. So I would say about an hour, and we have them starting at 6 o'clock. This year, you're not supposed to discuss after each interview the applicant. You're only supposed to rank them at the very end, 1 through however many you have. Okay. So they want to keep discussion to a minimum. So that should move things along a little faster.
Do we have
On the record.
Did you find out if we have a quorum for that meeting?
We do.
Okay.
We have quorum.
Is there a reason given for not having discussion?
Because now that we're filming them, they want to keep discussion about each applicant to a minimum. In the past, we've been able to keep the cameras off, and now we have to record everything. So that was the only reason they gave me.
So we will simply be ranking them 1 through 3 or 1 through 4.
1 through 4, yeah.
So,
I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
well, for example, in doing that, if all of us are here, you've got about 7 people ranking 1 through 4. So then you're going to have to take that ranking process and average them out to come up with a final ranking, that's kind of a collective summary of that.
Whoever gets, you just tallying all the person's rankings up, whoever has the highest number, the lowest number wins, right?
I can verify with Katie. She made it sound like you would decide as a collective what tax 1 through 4, 1 through 3 would be. So instead of each individual person ranking, you would decide as a TAC. So I guess you would have to deliberate a little bit, but she's trying to keep the discussion to a minimum.
So the way you've discussed it, I've seen it handled like this. The people do that. This was with planning commission members. Too bad Bob's not here. You have citizen volunteers. You have a city council or a commission as it is here making a decision on how they're going to vote. And what they would do is, this met public meeting law as well. They would rank the candidates. Each would have a sheet of paper, and they'd have the names, and they would rank it. Then the city clerk would take it, come up with the totals, and say, okay, these were your things. And then they would, one by one, motion second pass, let's recommend the number 1 ranked and number 2. And they have those votes with the commissioners' names on them on paper, but they're not discussing that. They're just saying, this is where all of you were individually coming together. So then do you want to recommend your highest priority person, the second or ranked person? And that process I've seen work pretty well. So you might think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too bad we can't have an executive session.
I was thinking of a way to make it clear the candidates are numbered 1 through 4 based on the order in which they interview. So our recommendation could be eventually come out 3, 1, 2, 4 or something like that, and just pass that on to the commission.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll talk to her more about it, because this is the first year that we're doing this, but I do like the suggestion of writing them down, so.
And when you're in a city that has pro-growth and no-growth members on the city council, and they're picking planning commission members, it's something to be very cautious about. And that was what they worked out, so it worked pretty slick.
Well, I'll ask her, and I'll follow up with you guys by email to discuss the process a little more.
So I guess the question's back to, I'd really like to get that alternate mobility discussion in front of you on that December meeting as well.
What date in December was that?
December 19th, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would just start at about 7 o'clock. Then
Yeah.
The meeting starts
So
at 6.
Yeah, we'll just have that follow immediately after the interviews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss?
I do have a question. I do have
I'm going
a
to apologize
question.
for being late if I could. And I think it says that I wasn't at attendance at the last meeting on the minutes. I was.
Let's see.
You were
I'll check that.
I think it was the time before.
Okay, I'll check it.
But double check.
Yeah. Yeah, I always go through the video and count, so I'll
Okay,
go through.
yeah. Maybe I'm confusing with the previous meeting, but I know I missed one, but I don't think the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
one.
I know I
I'll
wasn't.
verify. Yeah, you were.
I'm trying to remember.
And you weren't there last time either.
No, neither one of you
Yeah,
were.
neither one of you.
Lisa ran the meeting.
I'll
I watched.
verify and I'll adjust the minutes maybe.
Henry?
John, do you know when the police department's going to start working on Mount Pleasant.
I heard
Planning is
2019, you mean actually building something versus land use? Land use, I think they're going to start pretty quickly, but I think I want to hear spring of 2019.
I've been going up there recently, looking at the situation up there, and been wondering if we should recommend going to 25 miles an hour from Holmes Lane to Warner Milne. And the only reason for doing that would be that because of the school there and the school crossings for Gardner at there, and remembering that Holmes had a high incident rate when they did the traffic study a while back. And I'm thinking that with the 20 mile an hour school zone that's there for Mount Pleasant now, and the probability of still having the crosswalks for Gardner, and all the traffic going in and out of the middle school there, that it might be reasonable to think of dropping that short stretch to 25 miles an hour.
So we're getting a lot. We got, John brought, I hadn't read that article about Lynn Avenue and the speed zone along there.
Oh,
and there's another gentleman who sent us I think a different gentleman who sent us a letter with concerns for speed, mostly through the curves on Lynn Avenue, but I'm kind of coming to the opinion I'd like to make some progress on the Central Point one since that one came up again, but again, seeking out public opinion so that we could ask the state to come back and look at that speed zone again through there, and not just for in the area you're talking about, but really between 5th and probably Warner Parrott. Because, I mean, it seems like there's a lot, we've had testimony here, folks feeling like that process wasn't followed properly or not. I don't know if I can reconstruct that or not, but I think that was a 2008 study, so, you know, it seems kind of soon to redo that, but I mean, if it's going to create that much upset, we'd pursue it. The other thing I wanted to mention was, so I did mention it in my presentation, but transportation system development charges, if you're interested in that, City Commission meeting on 12/6 is going to be the first hearing. And then you just got the notice on something that's, the meeting on 12/6 is about the code changes. The notice you got is about methodology and rate changes, and that's in February, I think. So just let you know that we're continuing to move SDCs forward. And I assume this group supports it because you hear all the complaints about needing more pathways and sidewalks and projects, right? So.
Not to mention money.
And money, yeah.
I had one quick update for you guys. You wanted me to take back to the street supervisor your question about whose responsibility it was to install the overpass clearance signs based off of that written comment you had for 12th Street. And he says it's Union Pacific Railroad that is responsible for installing those clearance signs, and that he has made recommendations into the past about it, and they have not been very receptive. I don't know if you know anything about that too.
Same thing. They basically re-stenciled the metal welding that they use as a sign on there, and they did that a few years ago. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
I did see some email correspondence about the railroad interested in well, I don't think they're interested in following our process so much, but they're interested in replacing that crossing with something I'm assuming is a little less, a little lower profile or higher profile, depending on it. I mean, a little less, it would provide more room for, driving under that. And so they're looking to replace that trestle.
The benefit with that will be they'll have to follow what the new federal guidelines are for signing that trestle as you're approaching it. So whenever they get into that level of maintenance, they've got to bring it back up to code. So you'll see some improvement there when they do that work.
So I guess the statement, it is what it is quite appropriate.
If you've ever dealt with Union Pacific, it was God created Earth, there was the Constitution, then there was Union Pacific.
Although Union Pacific did work with us on Main Street, so the track removals there on Main Street, that Union Pacific did the track removals, and ODOT hired a contractor, and we're paying a big chunk of the bill for repaving that section of Main Street, and then ODOT's paying for the 99E work. But so I guess that's the UP came forward and took that on, so that's good.
I've got another quick question, if I might. What's the status of the development of the Myers Road connection to 213?
So it's moving forward. We just got 95% plans, so we're reviewing those. We have two pretty significant dilemmas. One we've got a good solution for. It's a stormwater line, a 36-inch diameter stormwater line that comes off the community college property that nobody knew. ODOT didn't know about it. I think the community college knew about it, but none of our records showed it. And it was going to go right through the kind of the cut for, as you come off 213, there's going to be a pretty good cut there in embankment cut. And that storm line's right there. So we had to work through that. And then, but the biggie has been BPA has power lines there, which we knew about. We were good with their standard clearance, but the 500 kV lines through there have an even higher level of clearance. So they're looking at options for how to deal with that, because we can't take our road grade down. So they'll have to go up, and we put our alignment in the right place, which is we can't get any closer to their towers than we've got our alignment. So we place that alignment right where it needs to be. But we were working from understanding that we had to have 31.5 feet of clearance, and they're saying they need an additional 13 feet of clearance for the 500 kV lines. And I don't know if that's a new standard or what, but so we're working through that, and I think that's kind of in their hands right now to help us understand what it would take to get the additional 13 feet. So that's we were under a pretty tight timeline, which we're staying on, but we think they've told us that they can't meet our schedule, so we're probably going to see probably about a year delay.
I saw some stakes out by the running path that goes by that intersection over on the school side.
Okay.
And I saw some stakes that said remnant parcels.
Yep.
So that started me thinking, if it's going to be a big remnant parcel, maybe you could just take it all and put a traffic circle in there instead of lights. I don't know.
Too much traffic.
Yeah,
Too late for that.
ODOT won't approve, and I don't think that's the right place for a roundabout, John. But yeah, there are some remnant parcels. The community college has got property, would have property on both sides of Myers Road. So that's all been staked for property negotiations with the property owners. So.
Is there possibilities to make a realignment of Myers to get more
clearance?
More clearance.
We spotted it as close to the tower. So the closer you are to the tower, the higher the lines are. If you get out in between the towers, there's a lot of sag, right? And so you want to be close to the tower, but not so close that then they're worried about a car going off road and hitting their tower. So I think it's 50 feet. We're right on the edge of that 50 feet, so we can't get any closer to the tower. We're at the most optimal place. It's just that this 500 kV and the fact that they need a higher level of clearance there is something that was missed.
Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.